Coming up, we got Lindsay Crosby of Locked On Podcast Network, who's our Locked On MLB Prospects guy to talk about Corbin Carroll's debut, the top 5 prospects in the D-backs organization after Carroll's promotion, when is Jordan Lawler going to be promoted, and so much more on today's podcast.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Miller Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millerthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or just follow me on my show account by looking up Locked On Diamondbacks in that little search bar. Twitter, Instagram, we're on everything. We're also on YouTube, so check us out on there as well, Locked On Diamondbacks. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. But without further ado, we're here to talk about prospects, the future, and there's nobody better to do that with in the podcasting network, in the entire world, than Lindsay Crosby of Locked On MLB Prospects. Let me take my name away so we can see your beautiful name. Lindsay, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. It's been a wild week. A lot of stuff's happened in minor league baseball this week, but it's been a good one.
Yeah, minor league baseball, it's September, so this is another busy time for you because all these young prospects are going to start to get called up, and we saw the D-backs kind of start this train this past week because they called up the number 3 prospect in all of baseball, according to MLB.com. Some other websites have him number 1. I like those websites a little bit more that have him number 1, and he's here. And Lindsay, if you've seen him, first impressions, but I first want to know, is it the right time to call up Corbin Carroll?
Yes, there is no more valuable time period than right now, that 1 month stretch where, apologize for this, but like this, there's no stakes. You're not in danger of losing a wild card or a division spot if you drop some games. You can bring guys up and see what they look like against big league pitching in that environment, and then what they need to work on over the fall break. And honestly, Corbin Carroll has looked pretty good in the games that I've watched so far.
Yeah, and I've heard people make the argument, like, let's just bring him up next season because this season doesn't really matter. The games are meaningless. Let's bring him up next year when we have a chance to win and compete. But I agree with what you just said. Like, let him take his lumps now. Like, if Corbin Carroll gets called up and he struggles, to start his major league career, like, I'd rather that be in a season where we're not really working toward the postseason. Like, the D-backs are trying to win games here, but we're pretty much out the wild card race. So I would rather him come take his lumps now, see what he has to make an adjustment for, and then have the whole offseason after getting a taste of major league pitching to see what he has to do and improve on his game for next season. Because like you said, you look at those minor league numbers and they're insane, Lindsay. Like, what he was able to do in the minor leagues was phenomenal. And I want to know, like, do you think playing in Reno, a place where people have considered it like a higher elevation place, do you think any of his numbers are like inflated, or do you think what we get from Corbin Carroll statistically is going to translate to the major league level?
So most of his hits in Reno, when you're in elevation, you're in a drier climate like that with the humidor, the main thing is like, how far does the ball carry? From what I understand, from what I've seen, a lot of his home runs would have been home runs in big league parks. For the record, that double in Philly would have been a home run in like 28 of 30 ballparks. He was robbed.
Dead center, dude.
Yeah, like just straight away. Again, 28 to 30 ballparks that have been gone. But
that's insane.
There in Reno, like, most of what he did translates over as far as if it was not at elevation, if it was in a traditionally sized and temperate ballpark, that all would have still counted. So 287, 408, 535 and 33 games. Ridiculous. It just kind of showed he went AA, AAA to the majors, and he's just consistently carried all the way through.
And what do you think his biggest skill or strength is when he's coming to the major league level? Because just watching him, I think the thing that I noticed the most from watching the game so far is the freaking speed he has. Like, I know everyone talked about his sprint speed when he got called up, and it's legit. Like, the D-backs are just posting videos of him rounding the bases because just the way he looks when he's running, he just looks like he's running harder than everybody else. Then he's also short, so his legs are just moving quicker than everybody else. He's like Kyler Murray, basically, but on the MLB baseball field. So what do you think his biggest strength is that he's bringing to the major league level?
So, like you said, speed is as advertised. He hasn't really had a chance to make more than like one or two plays in the outfield, so I can't really talk to the defense. But I've noticed that offensively, he's been making quality contact. And the big thing that we always look for when a prospect moves up to the major league level is against that higher level of pitching. How are you going to handle the elite spin? And how are you going to handle the elite velocity? Because the guys you face in the minor leagues don't always give you that same sort of challenge. He's had very good, like very high quality at bats that I've seen so far. He's not overly chasing pitches. He's making good contact. So like that's something that not every prospect picks up right away. And that's the big reason I always advocate for that little window at the end of the season is so you can see, like, so they can get a real glimpse of what 100 miles an hour on the black looks like, or what that slider breaking away looks like, so they can go work on it. And he's just taking them and hitting them dead center in Philly. So, I mean, that's what's impressed me the most so far.
Yeah, I think because that first game in his debut, he strode up with the tie game 7-7. I keep wanting to say tie game. It was a 7-7 tie ball game, and he strode up and he did exactly what you just said. He went the opposite way, perfectly executed base hit, and he wasn't trying to do too much with it. He wasn't trying to pull it down the line for a home run or do anything crazy at the plate. He just took what the pitcher gave him and he just slapped it the other way and found that alley, found the grass in between the two outfielders. So Corbin Carroll so far, I think, has been really impressive. And where do you think he fits in the lineup? Do you see Corbin Carroll as more of the top of the lineup kind of guy, as a table setter because of that speed? Or do you see him as more of a middle of the order bat because he's also a guy that has a little bit over the fence power, that gap power, and seems like just a great overall contact hitter? So maybe he should be an RBI producer for you.
I'm not making a comp, but the way that I want to see Corbin Carroll used is kind of like the Braves use Ronald Acuna. Put him in leadoff because yes, he can make things happen when he gets on base. He can steal bases. He's very fast, but he has the power potential. And so put a pitcher on notice from pitch one. You have to hit your spots. You have to be on your game because this dude can put the ball out with one swing. So I think you should lead him off. 15 years ago, he's probably batting third or fourth or fifth. But in the modern game, the way that they play it now, put him at leadoff, and just leave it open. Let him do what he needs to do to get on base. He may swing for power. He may go for contact. Let him handle his own game, but bat him leadoff.
Okay, I don't mind that. I like that comp for Ronald Acuna in terms of how the Braves utilize him, because we've even seen the Red Sox and Dodgers do that with a guy like Mookie Betts, who we know has power and speed, but you make him the table setter at the top because of how good he is at getting on base, and he can start the game off with a leadoff home run, and then all of a sudden you got a lead. So I wouldn't mind that for Corbin Carroll as well. I think leadoff would be interesting. I would just want to know who's hitting behind him, who's number two, because I think the D-backs just have so many options when it comes to their lineup. It could be Dalton Varso, it could be Ketel Marte, it could be a Josh Rojas. Like, there's just so many options. And then, of course, over the next couple of years, you have guys like Jordan Lawler and Drew Jones coming up. Like, the D-backs options are just going to be so crazy in a few years. And I just want to ask you, what do you want to say, Lindsay?
I was going to absolutely agree with you. And we talked about it last time we were on here. Like, I think this might be the best 1 through 9 in baseball in just a couple of years. I guess like just from real briefly thinking about it, you would do, if you did Carroll, I could see doing like a Carroll, then a Rojas. When he was hitting a Ketel Marte and a Christian Walker as a 1 through 4, that's pretty healthy. That's a pretty dangerous 1 through 4 right there.
Yeah, and then you're still going to have guys like Varso and Carson Kelly and Emmanuel Rivera. Like, I don't know the ceiling for Emmanuel Rivera, but so far what he's done in a D-backs uniform, like, he's displayed a lot of power, and Varso's still going to be a guy that gets you close to 20 to 25 home runs with some speed as well. And Carson Kelly, it hasn't been a great season for him, but since coming back from injury, he's been a lot better than he was the first month and a half, 2 months of the season. I should have put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I don't know if you saw that. I just got like a FaceTime in the middle of this. Hold on. Let me make sure my computer's on Do Not Disturb. My little sister, first ASU game of the year. So she's out there. She's trying to hang out after. I'm like, little sis, I'm in the middle of a podcast. We can't talk right now. But yeah, for the D-backs, like you just mentioned, because you kind of led into my next question that I was going to ask you, because like if the D-backs just stand pat in terms of internal development, like they're not out there to make trades, they're not out there to sign players in free agency. They just say, hey, over the next 3 to 4 years, let's just stand pat and just build our team through internal development. Do they have the pieces, the young guys on both the MLB level and the minor league level, to just build a playoff team through that kind of variation?
I think you do, depending on how long it takes Drew Jones to get to the big league level. And obviously out right now with the shoulder injury, such a fluke injury that seems to always happen to your first draft pick. Yeah. But like just looking at, look at the outfield, for instance. Like right now you've got Corbin Carroll, Alec Thomas, Dalton Varso. Okay, well, you also have Stone Garrett. I've got Jake McCarthy. I've got notes on all these guys for later. Yeah. Infield, you've got all the way around the diamond with the Christian Walker, Kettle Marte, Josh Rojas, Jordan Lawler coming up some point in time. You still have Perdomo. You have Rivera. Like you have the pieces to build it just now. Never mind who you can bring in free agency. And then the guys who would be coming up, if they're going to replace one of these guys, it has to be somebody very, very good. I would be a little bit nervous if I was on the farm for the Diamondbacks thinking, okay, like, yeah, I have to finish developing and I have to find a way to get into this lineup.
Yeah, and considering like how many players they have, like specifically in the outfield, like would you actually just try to package some of these guys that they have and maybe try to, in a couple of years, maybe move them for a star player? Like, I don't know. I broached the topic on my podcast like a couple of weeks ago. It's like, hey, the Angels are selling. If Ohtani's on the market, like in a couple years, like why not give up one of the three of Lawler, Drew Jones, or Corbin Carroll, plus a Josh Rojas and maybe an Alec Thomas or something, and then maybe another 15th prospect? Like, why shouldn't the D-backs trade one of the three top guys and still keep a Drew Jones and Jordan Lawler and send away a Corbin Carroll and a mix of other packages for Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, my thought process is depth will always work itself out. And so whether it's injuries, whether it's ineffectiveness, whether it's the ability to go out and trade for an impact bat, an impact arm, whatever it may be, you'll find a way and somebody will kind of naturally settle without playing time. I'm going to be really curious to see how the rest of this season shakes out, because my thought process is Carroll and Thomas pretty much can't come out of the lineup. You have to leave them in every day. And so you've got one outfield spot to divide around like four guys. And you're doing this, you'll do this next year. And then eventually you're going to add Drew Jones to this. And so, like you said, it's almost inevitable a guy's going to get moved or two guys will get moved. I always lean towards keeping one more guy than you think you need, simply because of injury and things like that. But I think it's almost a certainty some outfielders getting moved out of here.
Well, you say Thomas and Corbin Carroll, the guys who should be the mainstays in the outfield, but I got to ask, because this guy, Jake McCarthy, I kind of want to move the conversation to him, because this was a first round pick back in like 2018. I got to say, like coming into the season, like he was not on my radar. Like Jake McCarthy, I just considered like a 4th, 5th outfielder, a guy who's going to be like a quad A player, just get called up from AAA to the major league level throughout the system, just kind of go up and down. And when the D-backs need a left-handed bat with a little bit of speed, they call him up and bring him in as a platoon guy. But the way he's played in the second half of the season and his numbers overall in the year, like it's got me questioning, like, should this guy come into camp next year and really battle for one of those starting spots in the outfield? And it's like, Alec Thomas, he's elite defensively in center field, one of the best defensive center fielders I've ever seen. But if he doesn't pick it up with his bat, like, could he not lose his job, or at least his starting job, to a guy like Jake McCarthy? And then you have Corbin Carroll already in the outfield as well. Now it's like, all right, maybe it's Thomas or Varso for that third outfield spot.
Yeah, Jake McCarthy's a guy, when you look at, I mean, it's 70 games. So it's, it's a decent sample. 288, 348, 458. He's hitting above where he historically has hit in the minor leagues. Kind of going back, most of his home runs, he's pulling the home runs. You're fine with that. The thing that I've noticed that's different last year to this year is he's much better on breaking pitches. So last year, I think his batting average on breaking pitches was like 130. And this year it's like 324. So he's significantly improved. And that's a jump that we don't typically project a prospect to make, something that big. And he always had a below average hit tool from the prospect apparatus from us. And a lot of that was tied to his performance against breaking and off-speed pitches. And off-speed, he's gotten better, but breaking pitches specifically, he's significantly improved on. And I think it's a big enough sample size where we can kind of say, like, no, this is who he is now. He is just a better player against sliders and against curveballs than he has been in the past. And so, yeah, he's probably going to compete for the job. Defensively, I think he's fine. I think you would probably leave him in left, and you would probably, Carroll would be in center if Thomas didn't start, or Carroll would be in right and Thomas would be in center if he did. But it's a good problem to have. And then what does Dalton Varso do?
Yeah, that's a big thing. It's like, how much did you like Dalton Varso as like a pure catcher coming up? Because maybe you just platoon him a little bit more with Carson Kelly. And it's really like, okay, if there's a lefty on the mound, then Carson Kelly's catching. If there's a righty on the mound, you just put Dalton Varso as the catcher because you're just so loaded, like in the outfield with Jake McCarthy. And it's like the DH is going to help a little bit with that, but still, you have so many outfielders. It's like I still want Stone Garrett in my lineup as well. So, how did you feel about Dalton Varso? And if he had to move into being a catcher a little bit more, how do you feel about that for the D-backs?
So offensively, I think he's going to back up a bit when he catches. I've seemed to have noticed he does better offensively when he's in the field versus catching. Part of that just kind of comes down to how much energy it takes to be a catcher, and that's why catching offense in general is lower than usual. I think that having him as your second catcher and your fourth outfielder is a very valuable role. You can get him, a good probably 3 starts a week in that role, get him some other appearances to pinch hit. I could see a scenario where in games, you pinch hit for an out Thomas, and then Dalton Varso stays in the game and plays right or plays center once Thomas has been pinch hit for. I can see that role for him as well. I do think you lose a little bit, like I said, offensively when you have him catch, but he can do enough stuff. You have the DH spot. You don't have both of your big mashing first basemen yet because you've got Christian Walker. You don't have Ivan Melendez up yet. So you've got some DH spots you can put him in. I think you can get enough use out of him.
Okay. And like, if you had to just like, I guess, rank the ceilings or like the confidence level in terms of the guys actually like hitting their peak in terms of Varso, Thomas, and Jake McCarthy, like how would you rank those 3 in terms of your confidence meter? Because I don't know, Varso's had the most major league playing time. He's seen the biggest growth from year to year, but he hasn't been phenomenal yet. Jake McCarthy, I didn't think the sample size is 70 games, but what he's done so far is making me have a lot of hope for the potential of his future. And then Alek Thomas, he hasn't quite put together at the plate yet, but defensively, like he could be a platinum glove kind of person, center fielder wise. So how do you rank these 3 in terms of confidence and hitting their ceiling?
I think it's actually probably, as of now, it's probably the order you gave. It's probably Varso, McCarthy, Thomas, simply because McCarthy made such a significant improvement that even if that regresses a bit, and kind of normalizes, it's still going to be significantly better than where he was. The only caveat there is, does that change next year? Like I said, I think 70 games in is enough for that to hold. I don't know that for a fact, but I feel like McCarthy and Varso, we know a lot more about who they are, and I feel a lot more confident about their projections than Thomas. Thomas has probably one of the higher ceilings if he can get the offensive side together. Like you mentioned, he's not quite producing there yet. And that's something we've always known that wasn't necessarily his strength. I think that his hit tool is above his power tool, but I'm not sure how long it's going to take for it to come in. And a 297 on base is not going to be good enough on this team when you have prospects like a Drew Jones coming up behind you. So I think Thomas could be the better one, but I think he has the longest way to get there, and he has the least confidence in getting there because he has such a long journey.
That's interesting. Are you worried about Tom? Like, how much of a concern was his offensive profile for you? Like, do you think, worst case scenario, do you think he's just like the Nick Ahmed of center fielders for the D-backs team? Like, I don't want that, personally.
Yeah. No, I'm not super concerned about the offense. I mean, AAA last year, he hit 369, 434, 658. It was a 20-game sample, so there could be some small sample size there. But for the most part, I feel like the tools are there. It's just he's always been a little bit of a slow starter at a new level, with the exception of that 1 cup of coffee last year. So getting give him some more time. If you're at the All-Star break next year and he's still hitting like this, that's when I'll be concerned about, is he going to get there? Is the bat going to come around?
Yeah, because I want to give him opportunities. I want to give him the chance to, rectify what he's doing and improve, because he's still so young, and it's not like this D-backs team is ready to win. But at the same time, they're so loaded in the outfield, and all these other outfielders are just playing better than him. It's like, does he deserve to get opportunities when so many other guys are eating? And that kind of leads me to my next point of Stone Garrett, who also very small sample size so far. He's only played 6 games. He's got like 23 at bats, but so far on the MLB level, he's looked good. He came up as a profile as a power bat. He was one of the league leaders in home runs in the minor league, and so far in 6 games, he's got 2 home runs. He's got a few doubles. Like, he's been an extra base hit guy on the MLB level, but when you see some of those minor league players and they put up those big power numbers, they're kind of inflated, maybe like a Seth Beer. Like, you don't actually think those guys offensively is going to translate to the MLB level. But for a guy like Stone Garrett, do you think what he did in the minor leagues could actually translate to what he can do for the D-backs?
So I think what we've seen in his big league sample so far, one, extremely small sample size, but he's been feasting on fastballs. Most of the damage that he's done in this small sample has been off of fastballs. And so I'll have more confidence into what he is actually going to be once teams have made that first big adjustment to him. And the comparison I always like to give people on this is Austin Reilly. When Austin Reilly came up, he was just crushing bombs. And then the entire league learned you can throw Austin Reilly a slider down and away and he will chase it all day long. And it took him a while to adjust. And so that's what I'm waiting for with Stone Garrett. This is his first call up. This is the first time we've really seen him at the big league level at all. And so I want to see how they adjust to him, and then how long does it take him to correct from that? Because right now he's been very dependent. His production has been very dependent on hitting fastballs, and that is not sustainable at the big league level.
Yeah, and does the fact that he's like an older guy getting called up, does any of that worry you? Because he's kind of had like a pretty weird career. Like, he was one of the pretty good minor leaguer when he first broke in and got drafted, and then he took like a little bit of hiatus. There was the COVID year. Like, he literally went into real estate and was like a real estate agent for like during the COVID season, and then he came back and now he's like one of the league leaders in minor league home runs, and now he's playing on the MLB level. So he kind of had like an unorthodox path. So does anything that he's, his path, his journey to the D-backs, his age, does any of that concern you into him and his future?
The age does, as far as the organization isn't nearly as invested in him as they are in some of these other players. And you see it a lot in the NFL. I think is a big place where like first round quarterbacks versus later quarterbacks. But like, what kind of leash does he have when he starts to struggle, because they don't have the investment in him that they have in an Alec Thomas and a Corbin Carroll, in a Dalton Varso for that matter. So I am a little bit concerned about that. I do think that in a vacuum, if I'm picking from this outfield, he's probably the odd one out, simply because of the fact that he's never really shown the quality contact tool up until this year. Tons of power, like 25 home runs last year, 28 this year in the minor leagues, but he struggled a little bit as far as quality of contact and too many strikeouts up until he put it together this season. So I think less of a track record, older prospect, less of an investment in him. He probably has a short leash.
I don't care. I'm all in on the D-backs holding 5 outfielders next season and just figuring it out. Just throw Dalton Varso at catcher if you have to, because when there's a lefty on the mound, I want Garrett either, in my outfield or playing DH, because I just need that guy, because the way he swings that bat, it's like it's just reminiscent of any big power bat back in the day, because it looks like a freaking toothpick in his hands, like pretty much any legend back in the day. So I don't know if he's going to be an everyday major leaguer, but so far what I've seen, I've been impressed with Stone Garrett, and I like his profile. And also, we just don't have enough brothers in Major League Baseball, so I would love to keep Stone Garrett for on the MLB level for that reason as well. Always love having my brothers in baseball.